Hi, and welcome to the Women in Business Show. This is our very, very first episode. So, rather than clearly being joined by one of my awesome guests who we've got lined up, I'm joined by Russel Harrower, who is the station manager, station owner, and I am so lucky the fact that he's given us the opportunity and space within his network to get this underway. Russ, welcome.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me, and thank you for coming on to DRM1.
Well, you said, hey, what do you reckon? And I went, hey, that sounds like an awesome idea. And, you've got to seize these opportunities when they happen. And sure enough, open the door. We've come rushing through and here we are. So I was thinking about how do we start something new? And it's always a bit of a challenge because starting things is always like, oh, bugger, should have started last week. What am I going to say? How do we start? But when we actually get out of our own way, the only way to actually start something is just to actually start. So here we are.
Oh, it reminds me of a conversation we had a few weeks ago. Minimal viable product.
Absolutely. Now, this isn't going to be perfect, and it's probably not even going to be how it ends up once at the end of season 1 or season 2. But if we don't just get out of our own damn way and get things started, then so often we're just going, geez, I wished, or could I? What would have happened if I had? So we're just going to get going. Now, you're clearly in your lovely professional studio with no background echo, lovely, awesomely set up behind you. I am clearly not. I'm in my office. So this is where we're going to be coming to for future things. But, Russ, if I can put you on the spot, there is a whole bunch of stuff that DRM1 is involved in. And also Pod 2 as a podcasting platform. So we'll get a quick plug in for that as well. But the question's got to be, what on earth were you thinking when you started down this road? Now, look, I get that your hair is too short to be a girl.
Yep.
But that's okay. We're making special dispensation for today's show. So tell me about DRM1 and why on earth it might entertain the idea of a women in business show.
I think DRM1, it started in 2019, and I had this really good conversation with an ad exec who said, we pitched him an idea of starting a disability radio station, and he said, no, that's not going to work, don't do that, you won't make money off that. And we listened, we actually did listen, because he's the expert. But for us, he said, go away and try to be a bit more about the community. And so we changed the D for disability to diversity. And really it's about giving people a voice. And when I met you, you're like, be the voice, not an echo. I'm like, perfect. This fits really, really perfect. One of the things that we've always struggled with as two male business owners is we're not women. We don't want to be speaking on behalf of women. They are loud enough and can have their own voice and should have their own voice. And you don't need men speaking for you. And so it's not my space, it's not my place to be communicating on behalf of women. So this has always been an idea that we would like a women in business show to show the unity, to show the strength, to show the struggle, to show the successes. But it's just taken this long. It's taken 4 years to get this one project off the ground. So I'm actually stoked. I can't wait for it to be a chart topper. I can't wait for it to be syndicated on other stations as well. And I can't wait for the conversations that you're going to have, because I'm hoping that a woman listening to this podcast, this radio show, gets inspired. They go, oh, I can do this. I can follow my dreams. I will follow my dreams. I will be successful, no matter what you want to do. If you want to be a candle maker, or if you want to...
Oh, trigger.
Or if you want to be the next podcaster. Look, we're here to give you the tools, the techniques, the tricks, the tips, even hopefully some mistakes that we've all made. Not me, because I'm perfect. No,
of course.
No, I'm far from it. But no, I just want women to shine. And I think it's something in our industry that needs improving.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I say thank you for the opportunity for me and obviously for my future guests, because it's interesting when you say the to speak on our behalf, and it almost made me feel like somehow we women got put in a group with disability. I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure how that sits with me.
The same with the LGBTIQA plus movement. There's minority groups that get put
Yeah.
into a corner, and I think women have been put in a corner for some time. Look at women's sport; it's only just taking off now.
It's an interesting conversation to have around that. And I think, like any group, I wouldn't put women as a minority, because obviously we're 52+% of the population here in Australia. So there's actually more of us, but we tend to take different roles within our community. And as women business owners, the conversations that I have with my colleagues and very much around that, we feel sometimes like we're trying to catch up, which isn't always the case. And I come from a very male dominated industry when I was working in my career, and never actually found that. I can't say, oh, I had to fight against the glass ceiling. Oh, I wished I had been paid the same as my guys, which seems to be the story of so many people that I talked about, not just women, but a lot of minority groups. I don't fall into that category. What I'm beginning to realize is that I'm kind of more the freak than the norm, and I'm quite comfortable with that. But what it turns into is something quite an interesting dialogue when you are having conversations with people who feel like they've had to fight against the system, for want of a better word, that whole way along. And one of the things which still irks the bejiblies out of me is the fact that we have the Women's Telstra Business Awards.
Mm.
And I appreciate that what we're trying to do, perhaps, is level the playing field. But I don't see how we level a playing field by continuing to play as two teams,
Well, it's interesting you say
for
that
that
because
sports analogy.
yeah, it's really interesting about the awards thing because I can't remember which awards it was, but there was a music award just recently that did this gender neutral thing, and for the first time, there was no male award winner. It was
Mm.
mainly females and they thems, and that's awesome. But then all the men started complaining, going, "What about us? Where's our awards?" So I didn't
Step
realize.
up, young man, step up.
I didn't realize that we can go too far sometimes, but I actually like the Telstra Women's Business Award because it for um, unfortunately, I think men have dominated the business world, at least from the 90s, I would say.
Mm.
And maybe we do need, maybe it's getting a bit old now, but maybe we did need that award, that ceremony, that
Yeah.
pat on the back, you're doing great, keep up the good work. Whether or not there's a time that stops, I don't know. I think only women can choose whether that award ceremony needs to stop or whether it continues or whether it
Interesting.
evolves.
Well, that's the thing, is it's the other problem I have with this continuous subdivision, and representation is extremely important. Don't That's not where I'm going with this. But if surely we need to get to a point where this becomes normal. How we show
Yes.
up is normalized. And I don't mean normal as in you must fit in the bell curve and outliers can't be allowed. It's just like, well, that's just the way it is. And can women enter the Telstra Business Awards?
Well, women should be entering the Telstra Business Awards.
Yep, but they can. So you can effectively, you've got two prizes.
You got two awards. Well done.
No, but you couldn't. If the guys tried to put things into the women's awards, I mean, no. This is a women's thing.
But how many men's things are there? Like, let's be honest. There's men's clubs, those secret cigar lounges. We've got lots of things that we do that women aren't invited to. So,
You know what? Because they're icky and we don't want to come. That's actually what's going on there.
but I think the thing is, maybe what it's trying to do is create more of an awareness campaign as such. Because let's be honest, okay, let's say you have the category of podcaster of the year, and the you remove all gender away from it for a second, you might have a really good female podcaster that might just not have the profile of a AFL superstar that has millions of followers. and so that one just gets the award because, well, that's a high celebrity name, and and it's not fair. It's not fair. It should be judged on merits. But awards, I literally watched a documentary last night about a Dubai Awards. It is pay to win. Like literally, you can pay $75,000 and pick any category you want to win. So
But so what if someone offers 100,000? Does that pit the $75,000 person?
no, there was actually there was two people that won best DeFi of the year. But the only thing that was different was DeFi was spelt with a hash in between.
Okay.
So
Bizarre.
yeah, it's look, this is a whole big conversation. But if I was looking at what in my industry, like podcasting and radio, there are more female podcasters. However, if you look at the charts, Hamish and Andy here in Australia is the chart topper. That's two
Yeah.
men. Where's the females? Females not till number 3, which is Mamma Mia. Um,
But hang on, if you've got female podcasters, male podcasters, they them podcasters, whatever,
mhm.
however you identify, why does that? Why should that be an advantage? Why should there be if Hamish and Andy are number one, we need a female as number two? If we have true equality and not just equality as in, we have 4 people for this, so we're going to have 2 of these and 2 of those. To me, that's not equality. Equality means you have equal opportunity to do
Mhm.
something. And don't even start me on the equity side of things. That's a whole other conversation. But if we're all playing on the same playing field, then if you happen to have male or they, them, or female as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, why is that a problem?
Because we're
Why
not
do
playing
we?
on an equal playing field. That's the
So
problem.
you're telling me that Mamma Mia doesn't have access to the same amount of resources, the same amount of marketing, the same amount of everything else that Hamish and Andy do?
No, because Hamish and Andy is with Southern Cross Oz Stereo, which is 92.9, 94.5,
Yeah.
and Mamma Mia is just an online blog.
So hang on, just an online blog that's
Well,
got to
that's
number
how I
3.
identify it.
Yeah, but it's got to number 3. That's fine. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so the backing, it's not the fact that they're male, it's that they're with Southern Cross Stereo.
Hmm.
So if Mamma Mia was with Southern Cross Stereo, would they come out on top?
I think that it comes down to the topic. So what we find in the podcast industry is that a lot of the female, and I'm going to stereotype here for a second, but a lot of the female hosted podcasts talk about female issues. So, for example, menopause,
How
um,
terrible.
which as soon as you start niching your podcast down to a category like menopause, for example, there's only a certain amount of women that are going through that. Men are not going through that. Men are not your listeners. Men are not your target. But what I
Hmm.
think a lot of people forget is we're so focused on awards and winning these great accolades that we actually forget that it's not about us. As much as it would love me to say it is about us, it's actually about our listeners. Our listeners are what drives the show. It's the information that we provide that actually matters. I would rather have a show that charts at 99 on the charts and have really engaged listeners instead of a show that charts at number 1, has all the money, has all the advertisers, but actually their listeners come and go and really, well, let's be honest. Do I listen to Hamish and Andy? No, sorry. But will I listen to something more niche about business? Yes. The thing that really inspires me about niche shows is you're not trying to be a chart topper. What you're actually trying to do is give value. The larger companies like SCA, Nova, etc., are going to be focused on ad revenue, making money, and paying the bills.
Well, I'm going to put a pin in that conversation right there.
Yep.
We're going to head out to a break, which of course will make people want to come back because the second part of that conversation, I think, is going to be just a titch controversial. I must admit, I absolutely love bringing the Women in Business show to you all. We have these great conversations with people, but you can't do these things alone, much like so much in small business. Going it alone, like the old African proverb says, you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. And as a result, we've partnered with Lance Hall from Ebats Accounting. Now, Lance, I use him personally. He's absolutely awesome. He's definitely your better business accountant. If you're looking for someone you can actually have those conversations with, sometimes those uncomfortable conversations that you just think, oh, geez, you know, I actually haven't had my best year ever. But I don't want anyone to judge me on that. Or you're going, you know what, actually, I've had an awesome year and I'd love to know what comes next. Lance is absolutely the best person to have that conversation with. So if you want to catch up with him, book that free consultation. You can do that by going to www.ebats.au. There's a page there. Select new business. Tell Lance that we sent you, so the Women in Business sent you, or Jackie sent you. One of the two, he'll get the message. He'll give you great service, and you can see where that goes from there. Okie dokie, we're back with Russell's very, very controversial about the thing which drives the, should we say, places in the race as ad revenue, as money, as that's the driver, and that only people in awesome backing can take those spots. However, young man,
Yes.
what I was saying is that that's all fun and dandy. Is it really about the marketing? Is it about the backing? But your point there about what you'd like to do, that 90, you'd rather be 99th on the ladder and reach the people you want to, I think is super important. And when we're talking about women in business, I think we often find the space that is the issue. We really do try to niche down because, let's face it, you can't sell to everybody. That doesn't make sense. That's a whole new episode. But that niching down will reduce our audience. But those people are going to be more qualified to buy from us if we're selling our businesses. They're going to be more our ideal clients that we can serve them. So I think we've got two things going on there. Or three things perhaps. You've got that representation that we need to be involved, we need to show up, and that's all of the groups. So creating space to have those other voices heard, super important. We need to have those first conversations. That whole idea of segregating into awards, I think, is about celebration.
Yeah.
And does it speak to that, I don't think I'm good enough to compete against? Or is it that Southern Cross is stereo versus minor space? So the space that women in business choose to occupy. Thoughts on that?
Well, okay, let's break it down even further. So we know there's bus ads, we know there's outdoor display ads, we know there's Facebook ads, we know there's lots of ways to advertise in this industry. However,
I don't believe I opened the door on you talking about advertising. Oh my god! Dear audience, please beg my forgiveness now.
But this is the part that I think really inspires me. Is like, we've had shows that we don't really advertise, like Bounce Back Comedy, which is a comedy radio show that has actually charted in Australia at the number 6. And that was no advertising whatsoever. It's been rated one of the Australia's best comedy radio shows / podcast shows by a third party. We did not enter. We did not pay them. Just to clarify. And
well, because awards are part of your marketing. Let's be honest.
Yes, they are. But the thing is, I think the reason why Hamish and Andy and others end up on the top of the chart is because they do the bus ads, they do the TV ads, they do the radio ads, etc., etc., etc. Where what I find really interesting is those every odd few months you'll see a sneak peek of an independent just pop up out of nowhere. And it's amazing when that happens, because to me it's like, well, you didn't have the budget that other people have and you still succeeded. And it comes into question of what is success. To me, success is connecting with your audience. And are you happy doing your role as a presenter? Because it's not about me. As I said before, it's about the value. I love it when, I think we had a conversation a few weeks ago where he's like, what is the value proposition? And I'm like going, well, this. So I think this is the thing. I always say to people who come in here into our office to talk about podcasting and talk about radio, I say to them, why do you want to do it? That's the very first question I ask them. And
what is its purpose?
Yes, and about 90% of people will say money. I want to make money. And then
wrong media. This is
And
an awareness platform. Go away. Yeah.
then I have to have that really heart to heart talk to them about advertising and about why this is
Mm,
maybe not the best industry for you. About 5% of, actually, the number's gone up ever since Joe Rogan has got popular, but a lot of men come into my office and say, I want to be like Joe Rogan. And I say to them, go and join UFC, become a boxer, become a TV star, go and do
yeah.
all that celebrity stuff first, because you will not be Joe Rogan if you do not have his history. His history is so powerful. And that's the same with you, Jackie. Like, you do have a history of supporting small businesses and being the voice of small businesses and championing for women in business. And I think it's a really good partnership having you host a show like this, because it's on brand, which is highly important when you're
Yeah.
doing a podcast. It's educational, inspiring. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some cringy moments.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be some tough topics. Because let's be honest, like, I don't know. Look, I'm going to be listening just because it's going to be an educational point for me. But one of the biggest things for me with your podcast is I know some of the, well, I don't know them personally, but I've heard some of the guests that you've got lined up on the show, and they're very inspiring Aussie successful businesswomen in their own rights.
Yeah.
And to me, that in itself is a winning combination. Like, you've got entrepreneurs that are going to listen to the show. You've got stories from successful small business women who are not even small business. I was meant to say large businesses now, and they're, I just hope that someone, even if a man is listening, I hope they walk away with some appreciation with that running a business is hard work, but
Mm,
you can be successful if you follow your dreams.
yep. Absolutely. And the interesting thing about that, and I've got a couple of points to pick up there, but I think also it would be
Mm,
great to extend the audience of the people listening to not just the to other women who are in business who are looking for some mentoring connections or some information or just some Me Too journeys and things along those lines. But also, if you're marketing to women, it's so important to
yep,
understand your audience. And if you're marketing to a woman in business, so if you're business
mm,
to business marketing, let's try that again. If you're business B2B, if you're
B2B,
working business to business, then in all reality, if you're trying to run a business which markets and works with other women business owners, understanding how they work,
yep,
what's important to them is super important. Because when it comes down to
yep,
it, business to business or business to consumer, it's human to human. So the fundamental
yes,
which comes with working successfully in that space is understanding the humanity of the person that you're working with and you're doing business with. And it's not that hard sell.
yep,
It's about marketing. I know they gave you a tease about advertising. That to me, I think if you can get your marketing really cracker, you don't need to necessarily invest billions of dollars in marketing, in ad spend and advertising.
no,
The other thing which is interesting there is just to touch on is I think there's a real difference between being famous and being known. You know, that famous side of things is Hamish and Andy. It's that cross industry. It's the
mm,
Joe Rogans. They were famous before they started speaking out. They brought this whole audience with them that loved them as that sports star or that controversial person, or they had a reputation they brought
yep,
with them that they're continuing on. Where you've got someone who's working towards being known in their niche as part of their marketing, as part of their business model, as part of serving the community that they choose to serve better, that becoming known is a completely different thing. It feels like you're a little bit famous when you walk into your niche, your circle, your industry, as opposed to walking down the street and everybody recognizes you. And I think that's a real big difference. And we need to be really careful as business owners, because what we start listening to is that little voice in our head which says, we don't have a right to be here. I don't have the right to show up and have an opinion. I don't belong at this table. And that self talk, and I do appreciate that I'm being very, very generalistic here, and that I'm sure there's guys that have the same imposter syndrome type thing. But there seems to be that extra layer of guilt, for want of a better word, that
mm,
comes with being a woman in business, because not everybody, and I say with big out with the big, great big paintbrushes here, just painting opinion across everything. But
Mm.
it's that whole, hang on a minute, my family should be coming first. I should be doing this. That societal norm. But also, it's not that people say to us, you shouldn't be doing that. It's the voice in our heads that go, dude, dinner isn't on the table yet. What the hell are you doing this? And there's that tension. Sometimes it's easier to deal with it than others, but there's that tension that goes with, hang on a minute, can I be here? Should I be here? Am I allowed to be here? Is there time? There's all that as well. Are we just trying to be specialist, going, oh, us poor women, we've got that hard? Or is that something which goes on in your mob's head too?
I think it comes down to self-confidence, and I want to bring a conversation that we had in private to light here, because you sent me a message on Tuesday, literally about this. I think personally, you said, and I quote, "Good
And you
morning,"
quote,
and I
brilliant.
quote. This is a quote. "Good morning. With my friend who wants you to be awesome / mentor hat on, and with the deepest respect to your sales experience, I asked you the following leading question: Are you the brand? Question mark." And my response was really detailed. I won't read out the full response, but I think
It did take me 10 minutes to read, you're right.
yeah, it's. I think you're right. I think we do play this imposter syndrome, or I'm not good enough, just in general. I don't think it's a male or a female thing. I think it's just a person
Yeah.
thing, and I think it's how do you get out of your own head? Like, for example, I you look at, say, I don't know. I'll just say Elon Musk, for example. He's the face of so many businesses. He's this Twitter X CEO. He's the Tesla CEO. He's the SpaceX CEO, and yet he still posts on Twitter or X these really controversial things. I'm like going, you're damaging your brand. At least that's
Yeah.
my head. And I'm like going, I can't do things like that. I can't be outspoken. I can't say what I want to say, because I'll have a bunch of people in the background shouting at me, going, how dare you? How dare you? And I'm like going, I kind of love him on one hand because he's just who he is. But on the other hand, I question, and I wonder if that's what we do to each other in business. Like, they say that you will read someone, and whether you like someone or not like someone, within 5 seconds, or roughly 5 seconds. Why are we judging people before we actually read them? Like, why are we why are we judging people before we actually get to know them? It's yeah. So to answer your question, yes, we all have imposter syndrome. Sorry for the long answer.
You do you, Russ. You do you. Okay, so one of the
Oh,
there's a really interesting. It's a TEDx Sydney talk which was done by Tim Cannon Brooks. I think it's Tim Cannon Brooks, and he speaks about that whole. And now, for those of you who don't know who Tim Cannon Brooks is, he is the young Australian who got together with another young Australian who went, "We don't want a real job, so what we're going to do is we're going to code some website to make things organised," which then turned into Atlassian,
and
which
that's a
was
real
sold
job.
for it's a real job. They didn't want a real job, so they sat and coded and did things. But so he's gone on to do to launch still with the same guy, Atlassian, which is this incredible obviously company which has just been acquired for $1 billion, which is how he ended up. And it's interesting because he ended up posting on Twitter regarding solar stuff
Mm.
and Elon Musk responded, and they had actually ended up with a conversation about it, and they've been on stage and together and fighting the fight that we've all seen. But in his TEDx talk, he stands on stage in front of TEDx Sydney. Now they've got a license for 1 bazillion people, so literally 3,000 people in the audience,
Yep.
and he talks about the fact that every day he wakes up next to his incredible wife, and he says he looks across, and he goes, "Geez, I'm punching above my weight here." And it's just this incredibly beautiful piece, and that he, even with the success that he's got, he just sits there and goes. And Seth Godin said the same thing. You see book 37, I think it was, he published, and I remember listening to the podcast and him saying that he something, the interviewer said to him, something we don't know about you. because of course he's doing the book tours, and it's the same thing we hear so much about, this confident marketer all the time. And he says, well, every time I publish a book, and this is book 37, so this is not even like book
Wow.
1 or 2, this is book 37, he says what goes through his head every time is, bugger, this time they're going to catch me out. This time they're going to see that I don't know what I'm talking about. This is 37 books into Seth Godin. So as far as I'm concerned, if Seth Godin can be concerned, then you know what? I can have the odd moment of doubt myself.
I think that's the thing. I think we all have doubt in our own mind, our own psyche, and that is kind of a reality check. Like I said to my partner, I said, times we're going like, look, business is not all smooth sailing. Sometimes you have really rough months, and sometimes you just want to quit, and sometimes you want to tap out. Trust me, I know. Um,
Yeah.
but I said to my partner, I was like, I was just in my head, and I was like, oh, it's too hard. I think I need to get a job. And he's like, no, you will succeed. Pod 2 will work. You will be awesome. We will be rich. And I'm like going, I'm not doing it for the money. And he's like, I'm backing you. Like, and that's really sweet. And he said, why are you doing it? Why are you actually doing Pod 2 and DRM1? And I said, because I want creators to actually want to create. I want creators to actually
Yeah.
want to tell their story. I want to help those that want to make it a business, because there is a business here. It's just a little bit harder. And funny enough, it actually gets easier the more shows we have together and the more people we work. If we work as a community, it makes salespeople's jobs, like when I go and do sales, it actually makes our job easier, because we can say, look, there's 10,000 podcasters using our platform, and there's over 3 million listeners. When you say a number like that, all the businesses are buying. They're like going, yep, I want to buy, buy, buy. And that has a trickle on effect, because then we can support creators, because we can say, look, you're doing a great job. Let's get you a sponsor. Who do you want? And a woman might say, I just want Head and Shoulders. And that's cool. If you want Head and Shoulders as your sponsor, it's
All
our
right.
job to actually go and get them and say, look, we've got an awesome opportunity for you. Come support this creator and be awesome with them. Look, it's up to you. Do have to be on brand. So if you're doing a podcast about hairdressing, that's on brand. If you're doing a podcast about cars, well, unless Head and Shoulders is a brand new oil type, I don't think that's on brand.
Fair point. Okay, on brand. Pause. We'll take a quick break, and before we exhaust our audience, and then we'll come back and have more of a conversation about this. I have a membership, which is just one of my favourite things to do in the world, where we have a group of women and a few men, mostly women, who come together and assist each other within a community to become leaders within their space. So if you'd like to join us, our membership opens soon. We've got a wait list. I'd love to see you come on board. You can either pop across and join our Facebook group, which is Amplify Your Audience. There'll be a link below. And if you'd like to join the membership, we also have a bit of a wait list. We only open just 3 times a year. So the wait list for that is currently running, and I'd love you to pop over to the Arca Morai website, which is www.arcamorai, and I'll spell it, arcamorai.com.au. There'll be a button right there on my homepage, and it'll say join the waitlist, and then we'll get you in that sequence, and you'll know immediately that that opens again. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed all the tunes that the guys have scheduled in the gaps between us, just so that we've got a bit of a break from, Russ and me chatting on, which of course doesn't entertain people for hours and hours. So you're in the third part of the show. So good on you for still being here, if you're still being here. You could, of course, be driving great big long distances, and you actually then can't reach across and change the station. So we appreciate you. Russ, so you said just before the break that DRN1 and Pod 2 is about creating spaces, I suppose, Pod 2 for spaces where people can create and get their messages out and have an opportunity to be heard. And of course, DRN1 is all about putting some of that in front of audiences and helping people connect. So creating the spaces for people to stand, be heard, be listened to be controversial, because of course commercial radio stations have a whole stack of rules, regulations, and while internet radio does too, I'm sure, it would seem to be less restrictive about what can and can't be said. Have I got that right?
Well, internet radio does not have any rules or regulations.
Oh, there you
So
go.
you
So we can
can
say anything we want.
you can say anything that you want. However, here at DRM1, we do adhere to the commercial broadcasting standards where possible. We do let the odd swear word out one or twice a day, and
Once or twice a day.
sometimes there's a song that might have a swear word in it as well. At the end of the day, we realize the times have changed. This is not the PG era. I think people can be a bit more mature. Of course, we don't want our content listened to at peak time, so it's 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., where a parent might be picking up a child. We definitely don't want to have swear words during that time because there might be a kid in the car. And at the end of the day, our listeners are very important to us. I think the thing you've hit it on the head. Pod 2 is about creating the content, helping creators create. DRM1 is then to pick the best and actually so look, we love what you're doing. How about we convert you to a radio show and get you out to our listeners? But also, one of the biggest things for us in the media industry is there's a lot of community radio stations out there around the world that need programming. They will pay for programming, but they need the program first. And we're not talking about music DJ shows. We're talking about the talk shows. We're talking about the education shows. We're talking about sexuality shows. These are really good topics to be in this space. So I always say to people, if you doesn't matter how crazy your idea is, if you think you can talk about it for 58 minutes technically, then go and do a radio show. If you think it's only a 10-minute topic, then okay, we'll just do a podcast. There's lots of successful podcasters out there. And realistically, time doesn't matter. It's all about your brand. And Jackie, you know this as well as I do because you have been helping people understand their brands for so long. I just want to flip this question over to you for a second and
Sure.
ask you, what is a brand?
What is a brand? Goodness gracious. It's interesting that you say that because what I hear you saying with Pod 2 and with Daring One is you're curating content which supports your brand. So you're being very deliberate about what your voice is. Not the way you use your particular voice, but the voice of your brands, the voice of your radio stations. What does DRN stand for? What does it stand against? What does Pod 2 stand for? What does it stand against? And that is really almost the key to your brand. And as we were hearing you saying at the beginning there's a reason behind why these exist. It's not just a case of, oh, this is a great idea. I think you can make lots of money doing that. And that is so often the case of a brand. Now, a brand, there's lots of throwaway lines. There's, but your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room and, all sorts of things like that. But what it really comes down to is, particularly in small business, you are your brand. You are the voice of your business. So often the small businesses that I work with, particularly the for-purpose brands, there's a reason they exist. It's something you want to share with the world. It's part of your learning that you want to go forth with. It's I'm solving this problem because I've got the solution, and I know there's people out there that want or need what I've got. The struggle we get to is we go, oh my God, when I'm not selling something.
Yes.
And I think if you turn that around as to the why you exist, it's not about sales. It's not about, you're not trying to sell a radio station to somebody who doesn't listen to the radio. That's a whole different drama. It's like people have drunk water all their lives, and all of a sudden Pepsi comes along and goes, hey, cool, this is Pepsi. And they go, but I've got water. But Pepsi goes, oh, no. And so the marketing which goes into, and the advertising that has to go into, the education which has to go into saying, oh, yeah, water's great, but can we introduce you to this fizzy carbonated, well, it's the same thing, isn't it? This fizzy, sugar-filled, coloured. Why do I need something which is coloured? Because it hydrates you, but so does water.
So it tastes good. That's why.
but you've got to get people to try it, give them a reason to
Yeah.
change, which is, of course, that advertising, marketing whole thing about their brand. It's about the choice of the next generation, or it's the, Coke adds life and all these sorts of kinds of things. Whereas when you're talking about a brand for small business, it really is all of the things. It's your customer journey. It's the way you choose to show up. It's the way you show that this is important to me. I understand this is important to you. This is how I want you to feel when you interact with me. It's how I want you to experience what I do. It's the logo, it's the colors, it's all of the things. But one of the things I find is people get so obsessed with small business going, I've got to have a logo. It's like, but what do you do? Oh, no, I need a logo so I can have business cards and a web page. You're going, oh, I've got it. It's my brand. No, that's not your brand. Your brand is you. So that piece at the beginning about the why you're doing what you're doing, what it's important to you, how you choose to show up, why you're showing up, what problem you're solving, that all influences your brand. And then the logo, which goes over the top, is just a visual representation of all of the stories that go with what you do and how you. It comes last, not first, if that makes sense.
It definitely
That's a very long way
does.
of saying that as far as the brand goes, because people get obsessed with brand. It's like Arca Morai, which is obviously my business. Not obviously, but is my business.
Do you want to rephrase that?
It's like Arca Morai, which is my business. Arca Morai is a word, is a business name. It doesn't mean anything. Probably because I made it up, which is true. But neither does Pepsi. What the hell's Coca-Cola? What's Bunnings? Until you know the stories behind them. So Bunnings, of course, in Australia is this giant, enormous hardware home renovation store. But it comes from the Bunnings brothers, who were actually doing supplies to a tiny little sawmill down south.
Yep.
So, but it's lost in its way. But it's why it's green. It's why it serves tradies. It's why it only does that. It's on brand. So Arca Morai, if people will indulge me to tell the story just for one moment, is so an arc or an arca is a something that holds typically things of value, often great value. It's a space like think Jason, Ark of the Covenant sort of kind of thing. Not that my business has got anything to do with, or it's even vaguely as special as the Ten Commandments, but you know what I mean. It holds something of great value. That's what an ark or an arca does. I grew up in New Zealand, so a marae in New Zealand, spelt differently, is the space in front of the meeting house within a Maori community. In that space, they come together to tell stories, to share their culture, to celebrate who they are, to debate things, to make law, to make change, to feel and be all of the things which are community. So the business name Arca Morai is a place which holds things of great value, where community can come together, stories can be told, which is the core of what's important to me. So, and of course, then that turns into my infinity symbol and the sound wave. And that's just a symbol of what's important. I'm a talker. No kidding. I love the video. I love that coming together, the endless possibilities, the color. So you could kind of maybe see the logo and work that out. You could kind of sort of maybe take a guess at the name, but it doesn't really mean anything until I take a space or hold the space to tell the stories that go with it and why that's important to me. Does that make sense? Does that sort of kind of answer your question?
It
Not
really
really, he
does.
says.
I think it does, because I think that you raised something really important there, is that a lot of people do the whole, it's about the logo. I need the logo. I need a logo first. I need a business card first. I need a website first. It's like, hang on, you haven't even started yet. What's your business? And I think this is the interesting thing. Like, I'm going to just move that. this is literally our logo. It is not a logo. It is just some text with a colorful number one. And people go, "Oh, it's time for a logo for you." I'm like going, "No, that's our brand. Our brand is our DRM1 in a certain font with white and red, and our color is black. You're more than a logo. You're what your purpose is, what you're there for. Are you serving your purpose? And I think that's the interesting thing, because anyone can have a plumbing business or a music business or a teaching coaching business, but why do I pick you over someone else? And Jackie, which is, why did you start doing what you do today, and how has it changed since you started?
Right, I see. Well, I'm just wondering if before we answer that, we should go to a break, looking at the time ticking over. But you are the producer of the show. You tell me.
We
Do I
can.
answer or do we break? Do we answer or do we break?
I think we can tease it and say we'll pause. We'll put a pause in it right now. We're going to go to a break.
Pause.
We'll be back on the other side of this.
Now, it's really, really difficult to do a radio show such as Women in Business without fabulous sponsors. And this show is powered by Ignition App. They help you sell, bill, and get paid for your services, and they do it all in one place. So with Ignition, it's easy to engage with clients, engage with online proposals, engagement letters, automatic invoicing, payment collection, all of the things that go with actually the finance side of doing what you love to do. So the clients that you love to serve also love dealing with you, because things are just simple, not complicated, even slightly. So you can start your free trial today with Ignition App, and they're offering you 50% off for 3 whole months on the Pro or the Scale plans. So if you'd like to have a chat with these guys, see what it's all about, zip down and have a look in the link below. Okay, and we're back. Obviously, Russell took my pause button off me and used it in vain. Anyway, so to answer your question, Russ, which was, why the heck am I doing what I'm doing? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I didn't start out this way. That would be fair to say. I did the very traditional thing. I was pretty tidy at school, though my school reports, which my beloved mother did manage to give to my children at one stage, which caused great raucous riots, which said things like, Jacqueline would achieve more highly if she paid full attention in class. Jackie would probably be doing better in this subject if she was not quite so consultative with her answers and similar sorts of things. So obviously I was destined to be a talker right from a very early age. But I found that I got stuck a little bit in this world of shoulds versus coulds. I was incredibly blessed to have parents who super valued education. Later on in life, I found out that my mum's entire wage as a teacher went on my sisters and my private education.
Wow.
And then some. So that's a hell of a commitment. And I then bugged the hell out of them and said, Mum, Dad, I want to change schools. And they've gone, really? So I actually left my private school for a public school in New Zealand, which is a pretty crack up public school, so that I could join the choir. Now, that's another story. But that just opened opportunities for me, and I was really, really able to have a creative voice as well as my academic voice, which was super important. I got to tour. In 1989, I toured for 5 weeks with my choir in Finland and Sweden, and we went through Russia and sang at St. Paul's Cathedral and all sorts of amazing things. But while that may not seem relevant to someone who's now 50, almost 51 years old, it puts experiences like that make you think, hang on a minute, what else is possible? Even with that, I then moved to Australia with my dad. And for the final year, I went back to school because I got into photojournalism. When I got here, they went, oh, you don't have year 12. And I went, no, I've got bursary in like 6 subjects. And they went, that doesn't count. So I ended up going back to school and repeating year 12, which was interesting because I didn't have to work anywhere near as hard as I needed to in some subjects. But in others, I found that Australia's, for example, their maths is a lot higher. And so I've gone from an all-girls school where, in my foundation education, where, of course, it was completely normal for girls to top the class because we were all girls. And it was completely normal for girls to achieve highly academically because we were all girls. And even then I went on to my public school was an all-girls school. So again, back into that reinforcing of it's okay for me to achieve highly because someone's got to, it may as well be me. And it didn't mean I topped the class or do anything awesome, but it was normalized for me to be in a space where women were doing well. So I came to Australia and I went to my very first co-ed school in effectively what was year 12. So it was my year 13. And I'm surrounded by, there was 360 odd of us in year 12, guys and girls. And I and my girlfriend who was here, who's, that's another story. We don't need that. But anyway, so the two of us came from New Zealand and we both went into year 12. I did pure math science with the exception of biology because that's a dumb subject and I did geography instead. But anyway, so I went into this pure math science and I am literally, there was 3 girls that did physics in all of us. And they put us all in the same class so that we didn't feel alone. Okay. So me, who just got there, Alison, who came with me, and Kerry, who would have been, had Ali and I not arrived, the only girl in the entire school doing physics. What the hell? And I so clearly remember this conversation with a group of girls. And now, let's face it, I haven't had a lot of good girl friends because most of the time they're anyway, not because, and this is because I've informed this conversation. I do now, but it didn't used to be. And what happened was, it's like, why are you doing maths and science? Why aren't you doing dance? Really? Have you seen me? Does this look like a dancing body? What? But why are you doing that? Why don't you just do other things which are easy? And I've gone, well, what the hell are you going to do with your life? And the response coming from New Zealand, which is quite progressive, into what I thought was a progressive Australia was, oh, I'm going to get married. Pardon? What? How is that a career? And I'm going from this environment where it was normalized for women to achieve into a school which wasn't. And I thought, what the hell? So I changed around a whole thing. I did advanced maths and I had this incredible teacher, Mrs. Smith. Shout out to Mrs. Smith. You were amazing. And we finished our training. This is a very long story, but that's okay. You finished our training quite early so she said to us, look, I can either spend the next week bringing in other people to speak here, or we can get straight on with revision. And we all went, let's do some of that. So she brought in a gentleman who was going to be a geologist, but actually he sent his mate who was a mudlogger. And we got talking and I went home and I said to my Dad, new plan. I'm going to university to be a geologist. And he went, right. Weren't you going for photojournalism? I said, yeah, I was, but not enough talking in photojournalism. So I actually ended up with a career in geology, which means I got to work outside. I worked with amazing people. It was a very male-dominated industry. But I hadn't lost that it's okay for women to achieve highly. And I think that's why I never didn't end up in that glass ceiling model. And what was really interesting there is as that career went on, doors kept opening and I kept walking through. So I changed careers completely working in the mining industry. I then ended up in occupational hygiene, specialist occupational hygiene, which was awesome. But the marketing that goes with that is really important. You've got to tell the story ahead of time. You've got to work out, you've got to enroll your clients in that story so they don't all turn into Planet Stupid. So it became the storytelling, and that is my first love. It was my mum's solution to everything. So you got a bee sting? That's cool. There's a story for that. You hurt your knee? It's okay. There's a story for that. Had a bad day at school? That's a story for that. Had a great day at school? There's a story for that. Everything was about the story for my mum. And she was this incredible woman who told and listened to stories. And it's how humans are wired. It really is. We are wired to listen to stories. We are wired to go, oh, look, don't go over there. There's a saber-toothed tiger. You'll get eaten. The great berries are over there. It's about, and that's where our identities come from. It's also, interestingly enough, how you bypass the logical part of the brain. So when it comes to sales and marketing, getting people to a point where you can have a conversation, you can get past those shutters is super important. And so often small business, which is my second love, small business owners have got that we need to sell things, and they don't give themselves the chance to build relationships, to build community with the people that they're talking with, to embrace their own story and use that without feeling like they're showing their knickers. You know, so you've got that whole side of things, which is incredibly important as far as how we operate as women business owners, particularly. The fact that that's okay to share those stories, to create that connectivity, to serve our clients rather than try and sell to them. So it's about the relationships. It's about that me too. I understand where you are. I can help with that. Can I be of assistance? How do I serve? Which is a very different approach than a lot of businesses, which is that hard sell, features, function, if that makes sense. And I believe I've gone
No, that's
over
okay. That's fine. It's a
three
really
different
interesting
contexts.
it's a really interesting story because I'm like going, well, I'm a high school dropout, and look at me, I'm still successful. And I think this is the thing I love about business is you don't need a year 12 certificate to
No,
start a business, and you don't need to be able bodied to start a business. You don't need to be perfect. Like you just have to have confidence in yourself and that you can execute what you say you're going to execute. Sometimes you'll fall over. That's okay. Get a few
that's
cuts and
okay.
bruises and just get back up. Put some bedding,
That's what your
bedding
community.
on it.
Yep, yep,
You,
yep. Rub a bit of dirt in it, you'll be fine.
you'll be fine.
And that's what you. But the thing is, that's what your community is about, and that's
Yep.
why it's so important to surround yourself with community that gets you. And they're not going to be necessarily friends and family. They're going to be people which understand what you're going through. So small businesses working with other small businesses is so important. Um, and what is interesting though, as you're saying, the Russ, you don't have the qualifications, you don't have this, you don't have that. I have got a resume full of qualifications, first class honours degrees and master's degrees and all these things, none of which help me do what I do now. Made my mum very proud, yes, but none of them actually help me do what I do now.
It's really
And
funny.
one of my mum's proudest moments was the fact that I sent her a photograph. I had my name outside my door,
Mm.
and she thinks I've made it. I'm going, no, this is so not it. And it's such a funny thing because those ticks for success that you were saying, what does success look like? Now, the reason that I had my name outside my door was because I worked in the mine, and there was a whole bunch of doors that all looked the same, and they were brick walls of the door. And if you didn't put a name outside of it, you had to remember where I was. That was its only function. It wasn't anything to celebrate. And yet my mum thought it was awesome. She told everybody. My dad, on the other hand, has got very different measures of what success looks like.
Mm.
And I grew up assuming that financial success was his measure of success. And I held on to that for so long because of the conversations that he'd had, the conversations that I'd heard. And it's not until very much later in life that I've realized that that's actually not his measure at all. And it's so interesting. There's stories that we tell ourselves, the
Mm.
stories that we assume, which we're surrounded by. You can't succeed in business because you're too short. You're a woman.
Yep.
You have a disability. You don't have anything to say. Who would listen to you anyway? Your opinions are controversial. These are the stories which we hear. The problem with those stories is that they're also the stories that we start to tell ourselves.
Yep.
And the most powerful stories in any part of the world are the ones that we tell ourselves. The reason they're so powerful is it's because it's the voices in our head and nobody can hear them. So nobody challenges them.
So, what is success to you? What does success look like for you?
Success for me, crumbs. Okay. I feel most successful when I have managed to create a space and work with someone that they can stand in that space and be heard.
Mm.
I know it sounds weird, but as you said before, it's and this is one of the interesting things is people say, oh, what have you done? It's like, it's got nothing to do with me. I struggle to put my face on my webpage, let's be honest, because it's not about me. It's about the opportunities you could create. It's about the spaces. It's about the stories, the coming together, the community, all those things. So to be able to build community where people can thrive and to have that community function, work, and support each other without me directing that, without me pushing it, guiding it, leading it, whatever, that's a successful outcome for me.
Hmm. I think it's really interesting as we had this conversation. Part of my very long response to you was, I don't want to be the face of my brand. I know I am, from a technical point of view, the face of my brand. But look at Steve Jobs. I used his analogy, which is he was selling an iPhone or an iPod to the consumer. It was dancing silhouettes with the
Yep.
music. But then when it was a developers conference, it was Steve Jobs on stage saying, "Oh, look at this
Yep.
brand new shiny thing. It can do this. You can make these."
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of in that transition. I think it's like, I know that there's videos I need to do, and as I said to you, I'm not comfortable being on camera. I don't like being on camera, mainly because of my teeth. But I have to
You
do
know
it.
what?
Yes.
You don't. You don't have to be on camera. If that's not your thing, don't do it.
I think you've got to put a face to a name to the face, or face to
Yeah.
the name, whatever that saying is.
Let's face it, post COVID, people are nosy. They like to see what's behind the scenes.
Mm,
But you can do that so many different ways. If you're not comfortable on video, find a different way.
mm,
If you're not comfortable on audio, find a different way. Right. But this is the thing. What is your brand? And my pinning you was about the fact that you were writing great things about how much work was going in behind the scenes to make
mm.
Pod 2, to bring it to life, to be awesome. And the fact that that's Russell, I have no problems with. You are the brains and the keyboard and the everything behind what is beginning to be a really fantastic platform for podcasters. And I know that my job at the moment is currently to work out how to break it, and then you fix it, and then I break it, and then you fix it.
Which I love.
And that's
Which I
okay.
love.
That's okay. But the point I was trying to make was that there was no green, there was no Pod 2 branding in what you're putting out there. A hashtag. We're currently working on Pod 2 till all hours of the morning.
Mm.
Just those little pieces that associates you with the brand, because you don't want to be the face of Pod 2.
No, the Pod 2 should stand on its own 2 feet, and the creator should be
Yep.
its own face. And I think that's the beautiful thing about creating a business where, as you put it so eloquently, which is, I'm there for other people. I'm there to shine the light on them. It's not about me. Yes, I benefit as well, but it's actually about them. And that's that's what inspires me. Like I said, um, funny enough, to my GP, he's like, "Why are you doing radio?" I was like, "Because there are stories to be told, there are voices to
Yeah.
be heard, and they're not being recognized." Unfortunately, we've got some radio stations here in Perth that don't really care about our community. They say they
No.
serve our community, but when we ask them to do things, they're not there. And for me, that just hurts. Like, to me, that's just, why bother? They might as well divvy up the FM band and give it to actual people that actually want to help the community. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's amazing.
It's interesting, Russ. I've got it just as we close for today. There's a value I have, which I hold on to really, really dearly, as well as my need. And that is in the space of those of us that should.
Hmm.
So you and I are capable of doing this. We have both the capacity, the knowledge, the tech, the privilege, if you like, to be able to create a space, to be able to hold a space, to be able to emotionally invest in people who perhaps otherwise couldn't have a voice. And that's not about us doing that. It's about us using our superpowers, if you like, to hold that space, to create places where people can stand up and be heard, sometimes for the first time,
Yep.
and then to continue to hold that space until they believe that they can be there, that they have a right to be there, that they have a confidence to be there, and then open the door and let them. No, let them's the wrong word, and help them to take that next step. So they're standing on the edge of their comfort zone, facing out,
Yep.
and you hold hands, and we all step forward together.
I just say,
And that is
sorry, I was going to say, you just go to the edge of the cliff, join hands, and jump off it. Like you will land
yes.
in water, and you'll swim, and you'll be for free, and you'll
or
yes.
with the awesomeness which is belief, and squeaking back to a couple of my fantasy movies that I watch, when you take that step and you believe that that bridge will be there. I believe it's an Indiana Jones movie
I think it
where
is.
you have to take that bridge, and then suddenly the bridge appears. Is that if you take that space, you surround yourself by people who can support you and help you. When you take that space, you might trip, you might squiggle a bit, you might land on the ground, but you will pick yourself up, and something magic will happen. And often it's not what you thought. Often it's not what you intended, but it's going to be magic anyway. And if it's not exactly what you wanted, then you've got a start. You like this show number one. We had no idea how to start this, and so we just thought we're starting, and that's what we've done. And here we are, an hour in. We've managed to keep all of the words. I'm not sure it's been as succinct as it could have been, and I'm not sure it's been as on topic as it could have been, but it exists. It's now a thing which we can go and we can build on, that people can either can listen to, they can agree with, they can disagree with, they can. And I'd love people to disagree. I would love for people to go, hang on a minute, you're talking to me, I want to be part of that. In which case, get hold of you, say, hey, I want to be on the Women in Business show, this is what I've got to offer, this is what I do. And just to come back to a point I made earlier, I half made earlier, is that we have women in business, we have women business owners, but I would suggest, much like the disability sector or the disability community, within that community, there's not just people with disability or disabled people, depending on whether which language you're using. There's people who are advocates for, who are supporters of, and they're important voices to hear as well, particularly where you've got a different opinion. If I walk alongside this woman in business, I walk alongside this disabled person, and this is my experience, because they're important to hear as part of the conversation. So I would really, really love for people to choose to join the conversation, because there's a bunch of different ways of getting involved. Step one, find the conversation and then listen along. Step two is join the conversation, to be part of that discussion. And then, if you choose, that next step is to start to lead the conversation. So I would really, really invite anybody who's listening to choose to join us, to choose to join this conversation. And let's just see where it goes. Even if you're not quite sure what you have to say, but you want to be part of it, then let's hear from you. What's the best way for them to do that, Russ?
I was just going to ask you the same thing. But
and how do we go about this?
You can email womeninbusiness@pod2.com. All emails will get sent to Jackie, so she'll be able to see it. Plus, you can find us on Facebook. You can either follow DRM1 Live on Facebook. I'm sure there's going to be a group that gets started eventually. And I just want to mention now, I'm in a really cool group, and I think every listener needs to be in this really cool group. I'm just putting it out there. Jackie, where can they find this really cool group?
Now, is this the Pod 2 really cool group? Which
No,
actually, just to put a
yes.
put a pin in this, it's Pod PODTOO, not a 2.
No, Pod 2, as in you two.
As in pod as well. But yes, Pod 2. Okay, so this really cool group. Oh, are you? Yes. Okay. One of the things, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, thank you.
One of the things that he says, you rescued me. So one of the ways of connecting with me is I have a membership, which is a group of really interesting and really amazing individuals. I am so honoured to be able to create this space. So we're currently in waitlist. We're going to be opening the membership to new members at the end of September, which isn't that far away. 2 or 3 weeks, I would suggest. So we're opening the membership. What do we do in there? We're a community, a small community of people who are looking to grow our reach beyond the immediately. So beyond those people that you can reach out and cuddle every day. So that's what we're about. It's about marketing. It's about community. It's about finding, learning, journeying together to be, I suppose, be seen and be heard. So we'd love you to join us if that's the case. We've got absolutely got that going on. There'll be more details. I'm not sure if we show notes for things like this, but we can certainly work out some way. So if that's something which you think you might like to explore a bit more, then by all means jump on that same Women in Business at pod2 with a TOO .com.au,
No, just
Russ?
.com.
.com?
We're
No,
international.
unauU, so just .com. And we can certainly send you some information about that. So
Absolutely.
thanks for that, Russ.
No, look, I love that group. I'm one of the founding members. I think that's what you call it. And
Yes.
for me, it's just it's a good sounding board. Like whenever I have an idea, like I did just pop in my head one day, and I just it was a Saturday, I think, or a Sunday, and I just messaged the messenger, and I'm like, oh sugar, that should have been a post, not a message. That's a whole different conversation. But it's great to have other business owners just go, maybe this, and go,
Mm,
oh yeah, you're right. And it's not always yeah, you're right, but most of the time it's yeah, you're right. But it's really just about helping each other. It's about inspiring people. It's about giving the resources that maybe you might not have. And definitely if you're a new business, even experienced businesses, there's always learning, and you never know who you're going to connect with. You never know what type of um, friendships you're going to make. And I think it's just amazing. You've done an amazing job, Jackie. And
thank you.
take your hats off. I do hope that this season we get an episode about the golden handcuffs.
Oh, yes. We'll need some golden handcuffs. Absolutely. But just to close out today, we have got an incredible guest next week. She is a dear friend of mine and a really, really interesting lady to speak with. Her name's Kat Matson, and she has got a great career. She's just launched she's moved from her side hustle into the business full time. And she's all about people speaking with confidence. So again, I am part of her membership. You know, with these things go around. She's an incredible lady. I was super looking forward to you hearing what she has to say. So we'll sign off today, and we'll hope to see you, hear you